Good afternoon and happy Friday, 49er faithful. Here we are sitting with the 49ers atop the NFC West. Actual division champs mid-December. That's fantastic news. On top of that, Jack, we actually have some decent shirts this time around. I'm absolutely spending some of my hard-earned money on those NFC West championship shirts. It's a fantastic Friday. That means I'm going to be here with my man, Jack Hammer, on the Hammerhead Show, breaking down the 49ers beating the Seattle Seahawks. First and foremost, Jack, welcome to the program. How are you doing this fine Friday, celebrating a big division win?
Thanks for having me. I'm excited. It was a fun game last night to watch. Didn't quite go the way I thought it was going to go. It was much more one-sided than I was expecting it to be.
Me too.
But overall, it was a really good game. And the best part about this is beyond the fact that the 49ers are division champions. I think the best part for me is that now there's 2 days of no work, and I get to just turn off YouTube, tune off the writing for a little bit, and focus on some other things for a couple of weeks, kind of get the batteries recharged.
Getting a little bit of break, heading right into the holidays just when it's needed. I'm sure your days will get quickly filled by last minute Christmas present shopping and things around the house. Such is life. But yes, you are granted a little reprieve with the 49ers winning. It's a reprieve on a positive note. You don't go in with any holiday blues, man. You just start celebrating.
Absolutely, it's perfect. You get this time off, and then you get the game coming up early this week too on Saturday. So a couple extra days off. Everybody gets to rest. The players are getting a chance to recuperate their batteries. Man, I'm having a hard time talking right now. Recuperate their bodies after a tough game, back-to-back games with Tampa Bay and Seattle, and
absolutely.
They're right there, right, in terms of being able to get to that second seed. And we might even get into that a little more during the show.
Most definitely. Absolutely get into that at some point during the show. And it is remarkable just to grasp that it was really only 4 days wherein we became the division freaking champs. And 4 days earlier, Brock Purdy had just gone up against Tom Brady and the Bucs and dismantled them as well. Felt that was a great question in the post-game presser. I want to say a shout out to those that are here in the chat, because we always have a phenomenal chat going on, Jack. And we have the notorious GAV back in the building. He says all over this like Nick Bosa sacking a quarterback. Let's go, Hammerheads. Raphael 5629ers Sneakerhead here on the channel, coming in to say what's up to me, Jack, the Sneakerheads, and everyone else, reminding those to hit that like button and subscribe to this channel. Subscribe to Jack's as well. That information is down below in the description of the video. Jason Walsh coming in to say what's up. Steve-O thinks Kyle Shanahan might be the coach of the year. He might be onto something there. Pete Gorman coming in, the 2022 NFC West champs, the San Francisco 49ers. It never gets old saying that, Jack. Ellis 10 Sneakerhead here on the channel. Pete Gorman, what's up, my guy? I got banned from that morning channel. We're getting banned from other channels. Ellis, you're not banned here. Don't change that. I don't know what you did to get banned. I can't imagine it. You're such a friendly, welcoming guy. We got Jonathan Lamont coming in to say what's up. We've got Jan in the house. Told you all about Purdy. Sturdy Purdy as a rock. Niners going to sweep the season. By the way, Jack, I think you'll like this one. I don't know if whomever said it. I think it might have been Jan. Someone on the channel came out. No, it was Cisco 1946, I want to say, with I want to Brock and roll all night and Purdy every day. It just, that's too much for me. It's too perfect. Too perfect.
That is a very good one right there. I want to Brock and roll all night and Purdy every day. I like that.
It's fantastic. Especially writing it down. I love it. We got Shifty's 49er talk coming in. Love that Purdy got experience playing in a tough environment on the road. That could be critical coming up in the playoffs. Jedi coming in 8 weeks ago. It was fire Kyle for Sean Payton time. The cream rose to the top. Yes, it did. Black 59 Razor coming in to say hello.
It wasn't even Sean Payton. It wasn't even Sean Payton. That was Ken Dorsey, who's never even been a head coach in the NFL before. That everybody
it was just anyone else.
Yes.
Unbelievable. Sean 951 in the building, and Harold Murillo as well. Very excited for everybody here in the chat. Do us that favor. Hit that like button if you enjoy the content, because we got a lot of it today. let's get into celebrating a little bit, Jack. Obviously, we are kicking off on the positive note, but just taking a moment to acknowledge how special it is to win the division. The Niners haven't done so in mid-December this early since 2011, when I believe we did it 1 week prior to that. But locking down the NFC West, you heard players talking about just how special it is, how coaches had tried to instill in them how rare an opportunity it is to take home a division title. How special does that feel to you, Jack, to take home the little bit of a crown that exists for winning the division and winning it pretty handily at this point, 5-0 so far in the division?
I think it's fantastic because they get this guarantees them a playoff game at Levi Stadium.
Yes.
That's the biggest thing. Remember, there was a time in the NFL when you didn't have as many teams make the playoffs, and there were some teams that were playing road games even if they were division champions back in the 80s, back when we were, friends were first starting to win Super Bowls.
Right.
So the fact that, now as a division champion, you guarantee yourself a home playoff game, that's huge. So they definitely, like I tweeted out right after the game, they're bringing playoff football back to the Bay.
They really are. And Kyle Shanahan talked about it. You teased it just a moment ago. This feels like an apropos time to bring it into the conversation. The Niners are absolutely in the run for the second seed. So as you were alluding to there, right now, the only team that gets a bye is that first seed. Feels like a stretch to overcome the Eagles at this point. But to match up with Minnesota's record, if they lose this weekend, we're only a half a game behind them at this point, we would be tied with record, and the 49ers possess that tiebreaker. Kyle Shanahan talking about, hey, we are in the tournament. To Jack's point, we are in goal number 1 achieved. We are in the dance. Now we'd like to make sure that we have our easiest road to the end goal, which is the Super Bowl, and clearly getting that 2 seed would get us a second home playoff game if we win week 1. Do you think that the Niners have a chance to catch up with Minnesota?
I do. I think they definitely do. You look at the schedule ahead for the 49ers, and it just depends on how they decide to play this out. If they decide to go full bore the rest of this way, I think there's a real opportunity. I said this a couple of weeks ago on my channel. I really think there's a very solid opportunity that this team finishes up 13-4. You look at how well the defense is playing. There's not a quarterback on the schedule ahead of them that worries you. So as long as they stay healthy, I could see them running the table here and getting to 13-4. And one misstep by Minnesota and the 49ers are right there. And I think that would be a big deal.
I see Minnesota as a good team, but a flawed team. Are you feeling the same way, that they're not quite up there with the real contenders? In the NFC, quite honestly, I see the Eagles as a real contender and Dallas as being close to that. But beyond that, I'm not really worried. And maybe I should be. Maybe I'm being overly optimistic. They're all tough challenges. Don't get me wrong. Anything can happen on any given Sunday. Any team can beat you, whether they're the worst in the league or the best in the league. But is that your sense as well, that really the NFC crowns at the top with Philly, and we're right up there in talent?
Oh, yeah. It's Philly, the 49ers, and the Dallas Cowboys. Those are the 3 top teams in the NFC. The rest of them are all just kind of, I think, there. Minnesota, they've got a pretty solid record, but for the most part, they're not. I think of all the teams at the top, those top 3, Minnesota is the one that I could see faltering week 1 of the playoffs, especially if they're the 3 seed. That's a 2 seed going up against, number 7, who's the 7 seed right now? Maybe the Giants.
Yeah.
Maybe that's not necessarily the same kind of a challenge as it would be to be the 3 seed going up against a little bit tougher competition. So I definitely think it's the Eagles at 1, Niners and Cowboys. The Cowboys, the way this thing plays out, I think the 49ers are going to end up playing the Cowboys in the championship game.
God, that would be so sweet, Jack. Harkening back to the mid-90s, I know that would bring back some amazing memories for the both of us. I plan to be there at whatever these matchups are in the playoffs, wherever they may be held. Man, playoff football, there is nothing like it, my friend. You and I were blessed to attend a lot of epic matchups, and it feels like this team underneath Kyle Shanahan, when we have been successful, has produced some of those same epic games that you'll be talking about 10, 15, 20 years from now.
Absolutely. There's just so much what we're seeing right now. I know it sounds crazy for people that are older, like us, have been
Right.
around the block a little bit. Let's say the veterans of the group.
That's a
Let's put
kind
it
way
that
to
way.
put it, Jack.
Yes, that's why I was trying to find a good word there instead of calling us a couple of old farts. But uh, you look at it, and in a lot of ways, man, I think what we're seeing right now is kind of the rebirth of really what the 49ers were during their glory days. Because where Kyle Shanahan is right now is not far off of where Bill Walsh was at this point in their careers. And we'll see how this thing plays out. They've got to win a couple of Super Bowls, though, to catch up. But
Right.
I was just looking at the numbers last night, and Super Bowl in year 3, NFC Championship game year 5. Right now, this looks like a team that could get back to the Super Bowl here in year 6. It's crazy how similar everything is right now.
It really is a bit eerie. If it weren't for the loss in that Super Bowl, they would be almost mirror image of one another, right? It's absolutely crazy to consider. I do want to bring in a comment here. Kim Adams, we'll get to this topic a little bit later, talking about the progress that Brock Purdy has made, the tests that he's gone through, and where you feel he sits right now. But just in simple terms, Kim Adams puts it very nicely here. Rob, so is Purdy the second coming? There's a lot of talk about Purdy. There's a lot of excitement. There's a lot of dreaming big at this point, if I'm being frank about it. Do you think that's misplaced to have this sort of belief in the young gentleman with just a small sample size?
No, not if you're really paying attention to what he's doing and really keen in on some of the things that he's able to accomplish, because he's making. It's not like he's just making the same plays week after week. He's doing different things every game. He's now done it against two really of the better teams in the league in terms of the Miami team and then Tampa Bay. And then he goes up into what is one of the toughest places to play up in Seattle. And I thought he played pretty well last night when you consider the fact that he went into that game with injuries to his oblique and to his ribs to be able to do what he did last night. Overall, this is the stuff of legends that people will be talking about for years.
It's wild to watch those things real time, to take a moment, step back, take a breath, and appreciate what it is you're watching. Because oftentimes you don't realize it until you're 5 years beyond it, 10 years beyond it. But it is special to really appreciate it in that moment. Speaking of appreciating, I got to bring in Jay Cruz's comment here. It just tickles me, man. I've been doing these late shows and cursing like a sailor, Jack. It's just uncharacteristic for me. Jay Cruz says, hit that like button, Niner gang. Got to support our F-bomb dropping brother. So some people I think are really liking it. I haven't had anyone say, clean up the potty mouth, Rob. So I'm guessing that because it's that later start time, there's some tolerance being thrown my way, Jack.
Hey, it's your channel. You do what you want to do with it, right?
That's right. That's right. And, if it's a late show and I'm exuberantly happy about the Niners, it's going to be some F-bombs. The roller coaster ride of 2022. It feels like we've been on this ride before. Felt like we waited in that line last year, got a ticket, took the ride, didn't quite end up how we wanted. Maybe it was barfing over the railing after that big drop off the roller coaster last year. This year is yet another roller coaster ride. It has started out coming in at 3-4. Did you honestly believe that this team had a 7-game win streak in them?
No, I didn't think it had a 7-game win streak in them. It was, I've always thought that they were a pretty good team. No pun intended. I always thought they were a very good team, but I wasn't seeing them, on this run that they're on right now. But I think it just shows what happens when you have quarterbacks that are able to play, not make mistakes in terms of turning the ball over that are crucial mistakes, and how well everything else around them works because of how good this team is.
Have you ever, in recent memory, known an NFL team going down to their third string quarterback and still even being just a viable team, let alone what we're seeing from the San Francisco 49ers?
Again, that goes back to the Bill Walsh days, right? You got to go back. Well, there was Steve, but even before Steve Bono, there was, I think it was 85 or 86 when Montana was out. They got down to their third quarterback, Mike Murawski, and won a game. So it's that ability to have an offense and playmakers and the ability to put people in the right positions. And I've been critical of Kyle Shanahan early on in his tenure. Kind of changed that around last year with what he did, turning that team around. And just to see him continue to do it, this team right now is as good as it gets, I think.
To be back-to-back years like that, sitting at 3-5, going on that incredible tear last year, this year sitting at 3-4, going down to your third string quarterback, continuing to win. Usually it takes the NFL a year to catch up with, we're going to give this person coach of the year for almost basically like what they did year prior. It feels like that sometimes. Having 2 sequential years wherein Kyle Shanahan has managed to keep the freaking wheels on the bus. Now, you could make the counter argument that he forgot to tighten the bolts, the lug nuts to begin with, and that's why the wheels started to come off and we got to 3-4. But don't you believe that the earlier comment is fairly justified in that Kyle really should be considered for coach of the year?
Oh, yeah, for sure. I think so. You look at what he did last year, you look at what he's doing this year, and you look at the fact that they're on this win streak with three in a row, has just continued. Nothing. If anything, the offense I made the comment during the game to my girlfriend. We were watching the game. I'm like, this offense just seems like there's just such a flow to it. They're not fighting against themselves anymore, which it really felt like there was always a constant battle within the offense. And over these last few weeks, it just feels like it just kind of flows. And even last night, the only reason that they kind of didn't do anything on a couple of possessions was you had a holding penalty on Mike McGlinchey that wipes out a third down conversion. And then you have the block in the back by Brandon Ayuk that backs them up. But other than that, I mean, they were moving the ball just fine in the first half.
Man, the mention of Mike McGlinchey just brings up, man, fans are quick to go back to screw Mike McGlinchey type of energy. That one penalty was really his only glaring misstep in the game, to my observation. And yet I still, on the live stream last night, had someone come in and remind me that you probably know the individual that Mike McGlinchey should be moved on from. But I think that's just old memories. Like, to me, really solid. I do want to bring in this comment here, Batman29, because I think this is an interesting way in which to examine this question. A question that maybe has been beat to death around Brock Purdy, right? Everybody's talking about Purdy. How is Purdy's performance any different from Jimmy G's in 2017 when he came to the Niners? I'm going to take the first crack at this, but I would love to hear your take as well, Jack. What I saw in 2017 was primarily off script. It felt very much like Kyle Shanahan pared down the playbook and said, Jimmy, I just want you to go out there and ball out. We've got nothing to lose at this point. Just go do what you do well. We'll try and keep it simple for you. Whereas what I've seen from Brock and what I've heard from Kyle Shanahan is very much operating within the framework of this offense, that Brock firmly understands it. He has the poise to operate it, the patience to stay within the pocket, the ability to slide around within that pocket and continue to keep his eyes downfield, such that even his off-script throws often feel like they are within the framework of the offense as a whole. And when you hear Kyle Shanahan speak about him so glowingly, I think that underscores his belief that, he's making my offense shine.
Yeah, I don't think there is a massive difference between what Purdy's doing right now and what Jimmy Garoppolo did in 2017. That's one of the things that I think we've missed is what Jimmy Garoppolo was able to do in 2017. All that went out the window in 2018 when he hurt his knee. Ever since that injury, he never became that guy who could run around. Because if you remember in 2017, Garoppolo would make those off-script plays where he'd move and throw and do all kinds of different stuff with his feet in order to get to the right spot. And after he hurt his knee, he just didn't seem to have that same kind of quickness to be able to do that at quite the same level. Now, I'm not trying to say that that's the same as Purdy, because I think Purdy's footwork is even better than Garoppolo's. There's definitely more speed there in his legs, but I don't think that there's a massive difference between the two. I think what Batman's getting at here is kind of accurate. I think there's a lot of similarities between the two, and the difference is that this team is actually going to the playoffs, and that 2017 team stunk to the highest reaches before Garoppolo got here.
Yeah, to the high heavens. That was ugly, real ugly. Raphael 562 Niners sneakerhead here on the channel, coming in, talking to the Hammerheads, and I love it. He says, will the Niners utilize Tyrion Davis, Price, and Danny Gray more in the offense in the next couple of games? It does feel like a prime time to get Jordan Mason, TDP, Danny Gray, get them some reps in these games that matter, but don't matter a whole hell of a lot. But my interpretation of the way Kyle Shanahan acts is he's taking these games very seriously. And when he does so, he tends to keep it close to the vest, so to speak, play somewhat conservatively. So I could imagine a few snaps for these players, but I don't think we'll see a significant change. Does it feel like a prime opportunity to get some reps for these players to you, Jack? And do you believe Kyle Shanahan will take advantage of that opportunity?
I think it seems like a good opportunity to get them the reps. The problem here is that Danny Gray can't stay healthy. He's on the injury report with another hamstring injury now.
After last night's affair, goodness.
Yeah, I don't know how many snaps he played, but the guy just can't stay. His hamstrings, he's a fast guy with hamstrings that just don't seem to want to keep up with him. And then Davis Price, he can't get on the field. So at least he was active last night. He might get on the field a little bit here. I think it would behoove the 49ers to kind of back off of the workload of Christian McCaffrey if they can. But that's going to be I think it might be a little more difficult for him with the injury to Deebo Samuel to really get him off the field. Maybe somehow getting McCaffrey and Jordan Mason on the field together would be helpful. I don't know. It just seems to me like Davis Price, Jordan Mason. I think I'm kind of throwing Jordan Mason in here in this one because I think everybody's calling for more Jordan Mason, and there's something about Jordan Mason that's keeping him off the field. And I keep going back to the fact that there's something with his pass protection, something to do with him in the passing game that is causing him not to get more reps than he is. Because you've seen pretty much when they bring him into the game, they go to 11 personnel or it's a running situation that
exclusively, right?
Yeah, when they bring him in, it's almost never a passing situation or almost never a pass.
Yeah, it's like, hey, it's an obvious situation, bring in Jordan Mason, but there's clearly trust in his ability to hold on to the ball because we were in a one-possession game with enough time for Seattle to come back, had something negative like that transpired. So it is strange. There's some level of trust, and on the other side, not so much. All right, we're going to transition to the defensive side of the ball, but I do want to get to a couple of comments before we do. So we're going to talk about how special this 49ers defense is. But I want to bring in and just leave here as a statement. Kurt Papadakis, sneakerhead here on the channel, his comment, envision the playoff offense with Christian McCaffrey, Deebo, Brandon Ayuk, George Kittle, Elijah Mitchell, Jordan Mason, Juice, Third, and Jawan, and Ray. Go Niners. I mean, no comment on that. It just is spectacular to list off the level of talent that is out there. Kevin coming in, sneakerhead here on the channel with the super chat. I don't get why so many fans are hard on Trey Lance now. That is weird to me. Our need as 49er faithful, or at least some subsect of 49er faithful, to compare and contrast each quarterback against one another constantly. Like, I get comparing them for reference's sake. I get saying one is good at this, the other is not. But the level to which our conversation in Niner faithful land seems to center around propping one up, but then using that to tear one of the others down, I find that to be a bit perplexing. I love all three of our quarterbacks, if I'm frank about it. I think there's potential for all three, and all three contributed. And I love Brock Purdy saying that in his post-game presser, leaning on, hey, the work that Trey and Jimmy put in, what they did helped me get to where I'm at, and I'm just building on top of that. So I get that fans want to tear down some of our other quarterbacks. To me, it feels unnecessary.
Yeah, I think the stuff with Trey Lance, if we really get down to it, the reason why you see this with Trey Lance is, in particular, people are going to bring up all kinds of different reasons. But I think one of the biggest ones, at least for me, is that there's just so many people that have been trying to prop him up, and it's one thing to go ahead and want a guy to be good, but let's talk about these guys in the same way, because after the game that we saw from Trey Lance. In his start against Miami or Tampa Bay, I think it was the Tampa Bay. It's like, hey, I still want to see what he can do next week. I still want to see what this guy can do next week. If you go back to what Trey Lance did, you watch what Trey Lance did. If that was Trey Lance and what he did like against Houston last year, that became, Trey Lance should start the rest of the season. He should play in the playoffs for the 49ers. He should do all that kind of stuff. So I think that's where it comes from. I know it's where it comes from for me is you just see so many people. I just think that the discussion around these two guys is just so different. Like, for example, one of the reasons that Mike McGlinchey gets so much negativity around him, that I hear from people that are negative towards him, is that he was the ninth overall pick. He should be better than he is because he was the ninth overall pick. There's no excuse for him to be the player that he is. Well, now you have those same people who are telling you that when it comes to Brock Purdy and how well he's doing compared to what Trey Lance is doing, you have those same people saying it doesn't matter where they were drafted. It doesn't. Who cares if he was taken at 262 or number 3?
Yeah.
They're members of the team now, so I don't really care where. you can't make it. You have people that are just they twist things around, and it's because that they like a player or they don't like a player.
Right.
If you like Trey Lance, you don't care about the fact that he was taking it at 3 and Brock Purdy taking it 262 is doing just as well as him. If you don't like him, it's just that's the reason that you have these discussions going on.
Yeah, it becomes a biased and inconsistent type of a dialogue. Those are the hardest to have, especially on Twitter. Those arguments rarely ever go anywhere when the logic is inconsistent and bouncing all around. Hard to track those people down and disprove any points. Bringing in another super chat, just good stuff for the holidays from Harold Murillo coming in. Happy holidays, Rob and Jack. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. Let's go 49ers. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year to you as well, Harold, and to everyone that celebrates as such. Really appreciate that, Harold. All right, so let's get into this defense because it is freaking special. Jack, see, I'm back to the frickin' on this one, keeping it, PG-13. So that we're in compliance here on this show. It's 4 p.m. hour. You got to keep it good for the kids. So we started at the beginning of the year to compare this team to some truly special teams in NFL history. And then Atlanta happened. Kansas City happened, and we walked that back a little bit. I stood my hard line on, hey, this is a top 3 defense, I believe, top 1 this year. But I walked back my talk of comparing them to the 85 Bears, earlier Niner dynasties that existed, the 2000 Ravens. But when you start to look at, you look at some of the schedules for those teams, a lot of them had a single game somewhere along the line that was a blowout. And B, you look at the 49ers defense and how it has rebounded since then. We were allowing 15.2 points per game going into the contest last night, allowed 13 there. So the average is down, hovering right at 15 points per game. Is this the type of squad that should be talked about as one of the NFL greats, assuming they can continue on for the last 3 games in much the same way that they have for the remainder of the season?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I had this conversation recently. You look back through the 49ers history, and when you look at what they've done when they've had good teams, like starting in 81 through now, those good years, their defenses were always in the top quarter, usually never worse than 8th, but a lot of those teams like 81, 84, 88, 89, and so on, they were really good in terms of what they did on defense. And you're seeing that again this season. But to put into perspective how special this team is, I think you need to look at what the 49ers defense has done with Nick Bosa on the field.
Yes.
With Nick Bosa starting, when Nick Bosa's played, if you take out the game against Kansas City when they faced Patrick Mahomes against the rest of everybody not named Patrick Mahomes this season with him on the field, they have allowed an average of 11.5 points per game.
That's crazy.
In the other games. So that's why when I'm saying, when I look at this, what's ahead for these guys, there's not a quarterback on the schedule in the NFC that worries me, because there's nobody that does the stuff that Patrick Mahomes does. Jalen Hurts, maybe because of all the different things they can do there and his ability to run, but beyond that, I don't see anybody else ahead of him.
Is that really the only fear remaining against this defense? Obviously, you can have a dominant defensive performance and lose the game. Let's see Denver this year. That's possible. But when you look at this defense, is really the only fear remaining one of those elite quarterbacks? Are they really the only threat to be able to dissect what we have on defense and the scheme that DeMeco Ryans is currently running?
Yeah, really. You look at it and that's teams aren't running the ball against the 49ers with any kind of effectiveness. Even the teams that are really good haven't had a runner go over 59 yards this season against them. So
that's wild.
I think it suits up really well for this team. And Jimmy Ward has just been playing out of his mind these last 5 weeks. I think that's a big
flying all over the field, man.
Yeah, so it's I don't think that I don't look at this 49ers defense and say there's a weakness that we can go to at any level. The only thing is, if you've got a bunch of guys that can do different things and stretch the field vertically and horizontally, that might give them some trouble, because that's what Kansas City can do.
Right.
But other than Philadelphia and Dallas, there's not a team that can do that consistently.
No, I looked at the Dolphins as like, that's going to be a tough matchup. They got speed all around the field. Turns out you really got to have someone back there carving you up. And Tua was just not capable of doing that against this defense, whether we rattled him or whether he was going through an accuracy issue, as sort of the next week's game kind of alluded to in watching him struggle 2 weeks in a row. But we handled the Dolphins. I do think that last test will be the next level quarterbacking that you see from guys like Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen. But the saving grace is we don't run into one of them until the Super Bowl, and I'd be pretty happy to get there. Kurt, I got to bring this in. Kurt mentioned this on the channel at the beginning of the year when he placed this bet. He says, Rob, the Bosa $200 Defensive Player of the Year bet, looking like I might be able to pay for my Super Bowl trip. That is sweet, my man, because those Super Bowl trips are expensive ones in my humble experience. All right, let's talk about last night's game a little bit. To me, it felt like the game itself had one of those, oh no, this is a close one type of feel, and it didn't seem warranted because throughout the entire first half, I watched our players flying around the ball on defense, what we were doing on offense, although we were unable to put up a significant number of points. On the first 5 drives, we just scored the one touchdown. So that was frustrating. It felt like an ass whooping, but the points weren't coming. Did you feel that way as well? And if so, what do you think contributed to that lack of being able to separate from the Seahawks?
Well, like I said, there was a couple of possessions there, the third and fourth possessions of the game for the 49ers, where they shot themselves in the foot. There was the McGlinchey penalty, backs them up. So they, instead of converting 3rd and 10, I think it was, they converted that, or maybe it was 3rd and 7, whatever it was 3rd down. McGlinchey gets called for a hold, backs them up, and they aren't able to convert that out. And then the next possession, they're moving the ball pretty well. Brandon gets called for an illegal block on the back. So instead of it being first and 2 or something like that, or 2nd and 2, you're looking at 1st and 18. So they're not able to convert from there either. So that was a part of it. And then also, there was a pick 6 that got wiped off the board by roughing the passer call. That was it was the correct call, but that rule's terrible the way that rule's written. And I think you put all those things together, and that kind of helped keep this game close. And then if I can keep rolling, in the second half, you had the one drive where they're down there, and you have Purdy put the ball right in the hands of Brandon Ayuk on a slant that's going to convert a first down, and he drops it, which is not typical. And then a short field goal from Robbie Gould gets missed wide to the right. And so, Seattle's able to drive down and make it a 20-13 game, but that game should have been 24-13 at least at that point, depending on how everything, just with how that game had flowed.
It's remarkable to me how few plays it takes for something to take a completely different direction, right? If we had been able to convert on those plays that you just talked about, you're probably looking at a 10 or a 17-point swing in that final score. And that's a enormous difference in how it feels because of the way it played out. You got down to the wire wherein we've got the ball and they are only a 1 possession away from tying it up, and it makes it feel close. I always have that sensation going into Seattle, and quite honestly, in listening to the way the 49ers players talked about it, in listening to George Kittle mention Joe Staley and leaving the field in tears after 2019 and the way he had warned Kittle, hey, man, don't take any win in Seattle for granted. You almost wonder if the Niners have built up the wall themselves in their own minds of just how difficult it is to win in Seattle. I mean, you look at Seattle's overall home record this year, not spectacular, but we do have some troubles with that stadium. Now, I will say, having been in that stadium, it is real. That noise is deafening. It is crazy. You feel it in your chest plate. It's a very strange sensation. So, as Kittle also stated, that crowd is incredible. As much as I hate them, they are incredible. I give them props. But yes, it's a tough place to go into, and the Niners celebrated on their field. Does this make up for them having turkey legs on our freaking logo on Thanksgiving, Jack? Is this at least beginning to even the score?
No, because the Foreigners haven't been able to eat on their field yet. I
That
mean,
was so painful.
they have stolen 2 NFC division titles up there now in the last few years, but no, anytime a team is on your 50-yard line eating chicken legs, that takes or turkey legs, it takes a little while for you to get over that.
It really does. I'm still not over it. And it brings back bad memories of Sherm, who I have since wrapped my arms around as a brother and Niner alumni. Bullpup 33 coming in to take a victory lap, says Rob. Like I said earlier, the addition of Mooney Ward was going to have a Dion effect. Man, Mooney worth the money, says Steven Saunders. He has been really amazing to watch. I know that we already covered the defense, but just tip of the cap to Mooney Ward. Were you impressed with what you saw him going up against DK in that physical matchup last night?
Yeah, he stood up against them throughout the game. There was a couple of plays that he was able to make against them, but for the most part, I felt like Ward won that battle. You even saw the 49ers moving him around with it. It wasn't like he just stayed on one side of the field like usual. He was actually traveling a little bit with DK Metcalf, and I thought he did a really good job against him.
Physically went toe-to-toe with him, and mentally, I think, had the edge, was in DK's head, and you saw it with the penalties that came out. Moses Martinez, he was watching Mooney Ward because he's all about the cornerbacks. He says, Rob, Jack, what up to both of you? What got me fired up, the Ward and Metcalf battle. Loved it. Reminded me how physical I was as a defensive back. Moses, we want to see the tape. The tape never lies. Send it in. We'll put it on the channel. Okay, we're getting into other side of the ball. We're getting into from talking about the defense to talking about young Brock Purdy. BCP, as he is affectionately known in the fan base. No, BCB. BCP. I don't know why I just added in. Maybe I'm thinking PCP, BCP. It's confused here, Jack. It's Friday afternoon. You're going to have to forgive me on that one.
Just let it fly. It's your channel. Let it fly. Just don't even try to go acronyms here.
I'm taking shots downfield, Jack. Just airing it out here. So talking about the progress of Purdy, to me, he keeps passing each test that is put in front of him. Test number 1, getting thrown into a game where you've been going all season preparing for games and not getting game action. Easy enough to just slack a little bit on your preparation. He came in, did not miss a beat, was phenomenal his first game. Second game, now he's facing a top 10 defense. Oh, by the way, going up against the greatest of all time on the other side of the ball. Admittedly, you don't play directly against him, but the mental aspect of that game was high pressure. Then on a short week, dealing with injury, going into a division opponent's home field, the loudest stadium in the NFL, he looked poised yet again. I just keep wanting to say, I'm going to hold back a little bit, but I can't. I just can't because of what I'm seeing with my own 2 eyes. How special has it been to watch the start for Brock Purdy?
Hey, look, I'm the guy who said the front season was over with and Jimmy Garoppolo got hurt. So, I look at this thing and I'm like, I'm surprised that he's doing as well as he did. I mean, I thought that there were some days in training camp where he looked pretty good. I never thought that he was nearly as bad as what some people were saying about him was. But to think that he was going to come in and lead the 49ers the way that he is, no, I missed the boat on that. And so, you go back to that game against Miami. I'm in the press box. He comes in, and the feeling in the press box was, oh shoot, the Niners are in big trouble here.
Right.
So it wasn't just me; it was pretty much everybody in that building up there that was following along felt the same way. And then they're like, oh, they're just going to hand it off here for a while. And the next thing you know, he's throwing the ball over the field, and the progress that he's made. Look what this guy's done. He played so well against Tampa Bay. He's off the field in the fourth quarter. So you look at his progress. I think the 49ers have the quarterback that can take him to the big game. It's just a matter of not making stupid mistakes, and we haven't really seen that yet from him.
It's spectacular. Plus, he's got all sorts of fantastic nicknames. The Brocket Ship. I mean, come on, just one after another. By the way, Crazy Otto, you're right. I usually give the disclaimer when saying it, this generation's, but coming in to say rubbish to my Brady comment of GOAT, Montana is the GOAT. You're not going to get any argument from Jack on this one. And clearly, with the image sitting right behind me, it's not going to take much to sway me over to that side. Let me get in a couple of the super chats that are coming in, which are always greatly appreciated on the channel. Gold Digger 1849, who is also a sneakerhead here on the channel, says Greenlaw has been very impressive and active. Amazingly impressive. I got to give credit to John Lynch on this one. I thought it was too early to sign Greenlaw to the extension that we did. And now it looks like a genius level move because we got a phenomenal linebacker on a very reasonable extension. It's just foresight. It's an amazing linebacker core that we have. And it seems to be the gel that holds the entirety of our all-star defense together.
Yeah, Greenlaw's a guy. He's been a stud, right? He leads the team in tackles despite missing a game. He has 111. That's more than anybody else on the team. Just makes big play after big play. He's forced a couple of fumbles now in the last few weeks, and like you said, the 49ers got out ahead of that one with that extension. And getting that extension done when they did saved them a bunch of money because if they were having to do that extension after this year, Jed York would be digging into his pockets a little bit more.
Yes, he would. And nothing wrong with getting Jed York to dig into his pockets. Unfortunately, there's this salary cap that we're up against, and I do care about that. But burn Jed's money all you like. Let's get into my finger hurt coming in. If Trey can't beat out Purdy, won't his value go down? I think it makes sense to get something for him now instead of nothing later. We should cut our losses and trade him. He's also not that cheap. This is talking about the eventual quarterback competition that seems inevitable at this point going into next season. Who knows if the 49ers will be interested in or able to re-sign Jimmy Garoppolo? My guess would be no. My stance on having Brock and Lance going into next year is, as evidenced by this season, you need quality quarterbacks. And I'm all for a quarterback competition and allowing both of those players to remain on the roster throughout. I do agree with the logic that if one or the other is beaten out in training camp, that does hurt the other one's trade value because they have been beaten out by another player. It doesn't completely eliminate it. And again, I wouldn't necessarily be looking to trade them. This is obviously way too far ahead of us. We don't need to worry about it right now. But what are your general thoughts on having that quarterback competition versus having a trade ahead of that?
Well, I mean, Trey Lance, the 49ers can't trade him now. So
right. He's not this season can't do. Got to wait for the offseason.
Right. So there's no trading of him until later on. So when I read the comment, it says makes sense to get something for him now instead of nothing later. I think, right now you're not getting much for him anyway. And for the 49ers, when you look at where the 49ers are, it's in their best interest to keep both of these guys. You already hit on it, Rob, as far as, having multiple guys in the room that can win games for you. That's a positive. We don't know exactly where Trey Lance is even going to be. It's all speculation that he's going to be able to do what he can accomplish, but at least having him around, I think, is better as your backup. If he's not the starter, I don't see why you move off of him. Both these guys combined are less than $10 million against your salary cap. And you compare that to other teams across the league, the 49ers are in a really good spot there. Trey Lance, Brock Purdy are your 1 and 2 going into next year. And then if you want, you can maybe draft a guy at the end of, get another Mr. Irrelevant to come in and be your third string guy, or pull, somebody off of the scrap heap. Maybe Josh Johnson, bring him back as your third.
Hey, the Johnson brothers, keep them coming. Let them always be back and off, on and off of the roster. Let me tell you, I appreciate that super chat. My finger hurt. Got to celebrate all of our international fans, but in particular, Doug Boa Boy coming in. 49ers fans watching from New Zealand. Hi, Rob. Hello, Doug. Good to see you. We're adding in New Zealand to the mix. We've got them from all over, Wales, UK, Australia. We've gotten some from Guam, Thailand, I believe. We are adding to the list, and it's always a thrill to check an additional box there. Good to see you, Doug. All right. Got to bring in Kevin here. Can you smell what the Brock is cooking? We need Kittle to say that one. We need him to say that real enthusiastically. Last super chat here before our next topic. Neil coming in to say, Merry Christmas. Turns out Brock is very similar to Mac. I will say, I think from what I've seen so far in observation of both, I like Brock's skill set above Mac Jones. But the thought did occur to me, yeah, we really could have stayed there at 12 and taken Mac and not traded the picks and had someone operating the system like that. I'm glad we didn't, because then we wouldn't be where we are right now. But I can see people who are saying, hey, with hindsight being 2020, and I know someone on this call might have been pushing for that very outcome that year, but I'll leave you to say that yourself or not, Jack.
No, I like Neil's super chat here. Thank you for the super chat and bringing it up, because I tweeted this out. I got myself in a little bit of trouble. If you check out Twitter, you'll see that I put out there that, hey, what you're seeing these last few weeks with Brock Purdy is why I felt like Mac Jones was the best pick for the 49ers in last year's draft. Now, you can say whatever you want about where Mac Jones is right now, but Mac Jones also hasn't been playing for Kyle Shanahan for 2 years. So to say that his numbers would be different, what he's done in New England is what he do in San Francisco, I think you're mistaking, because most quarterbacks don't do what what these guys have done in San Francisco over the last few years. So I think there's a lot of similarities between the two. I do feel like Brock Purdy has better mobility, although
Yes.
Mac Jones's mobility is a little underrated, but it's still not at the same level. Hey, the 49ers got, I think, a guy at 262 that gives them something that the 49ers would have. I thought the 49ers should get, in the top 15 last year. So really, at the end of the day, look what does this tell us? The NFL doesn't know what they're doing when it comes to drafting quarterbacks. They got a guy at 262 that's just as good as any of those guys, that's putting up numbers that are comparable to any of those guys that came out last year. 3 quarterbacks taken in the first, 15 or 20 picks, whatever it was. And there's 5 of them, I think. And you got a guy at 262 is outplaying all of them.
That's wild. It really is wild. And it does underscore how much of a freaking crapshoot it is in the draft. We like to talk about it. We like to break it down, but there is a lot of failure in those picks. And the Niners have missed on their fair share, but man, have they hit some freaking home runs in this regime. All right, we've alluded to this, but time to put our money where our mouths are on this one. And I want to ask you, will the Niners win out? We talked about whether it seems possible. As of right now, they're still in the running for that 2 seed. So they still have motivation. But in deciding whether or not the Niners will win out, you do have to take into consideration whether or not at some point the seeding will become a non-factor and they potentially rest starters in that final game, the final 2 games, whatever the case may be there. Do you believe that if the Niners are going well, if they are running with it, and they are trying, let's take that equation out of it. Let's say they attempt every game to their fullest. Should the Niners beat every team remaining in front of them?
Yeah, they're better than everybody that they have on their schedule. Washington's a pretty good team, but I think the 49ers defense is much better than the Washington defense, and the quarterbacks are probably going to be negligible as far as the difference there, right? And let's just give Tyler Heineke some props on that one.
Yeah.
And then you get to Vegas, New Year's Day. 49ers are better than Las Vegas, and then the 49ers are better than Arizona. We've already seen it once. It's going to be the same quarterback again the next time they play now with the injury to Kyler Murray. The 49ers should win out here if they just played to their potential over the last 3 weeks. I don't think that anybody should be surprised if they finish out at 13-4.
That's how I feel at this point. It felt weird to say it several weeks ago, and now here I am believing that, yes, 13-4, unless they rest starters, I absolutely believe that they should win every game remaining on the regular season schedule. And we had a question come in that feels like an easy one to answer. Oregon Life, obviously, shout out to Oregon. Great state of Oregon, unless you're planning to move here and then stay away, because I don't want my property taxes going up. But yes, what does it take for us to get the 2 seed? We just have to be in a dead tie with Minnesota. Obviously, if we have a better record than Minnesota, we will claim the 2 seed. But we have the advantage right now in overall NFC win rate. And so that would be the tiebreaker that would exist with Minnesota. We're a half game back. If Minnesota lost this weekend, we'd be in a tie, and we would technically be sitting in that number 2 spot. So very possible. And my finger hurt coming back in saying all for quality quarterbacks too, Rob, which is why they should trade Trey. Jimmy was cheaper this year and can actually win. Jimmy as backup makes more sense. I just don't know that, number one, that Jimmy's going to come back here in free agency. And I don't believe that Jimmy will be as inexpensive in free agency this time around as he was. He had awkward leverage. Yes, he's dealing with another injury. I could be mistaken about how that makes teams view him. Again, to Jack's point, the league year doesn't begin until well into the offseason. You can't make any trades post-trade deadline until the new league year opens up. So you could move one of the quarterbacks before you get into any of the team-organized activities, and yet that is a long ways down the road. For me, I'm looking for depth in the quarterback room. Jack, do you have feelings on this one?
Yeah, I just don't agree with it. I don't think that. Yeah, I don't think that it's smart to trade Trey Lance right now. I think I get where he's going. I think Jimmy Garoppolo as a backup makes more sense. Why would Jimmy Garoppolo want to stay in San Francisco to be a backup to Trey Lance or Brock Purdy?
Right.
It makes no sense. He can go to a team that's going to allow him to be a starting quarterback, and I think that's going to happen. I don't see why he'd stay here. I think the first quarterback room is going to be Trey Lance, Brock Purdy, and some other quarterback to be named. So I don't know. The 49ers aren't dumb, and that's what this was the conversation last year in the offseason was get rid of Jimmy. You got to get rid of Jimmy. What are we doing? Get rid of him. They're screwing this up. They're screwing it up. Well, take a step back. They were actually smart to do what they did. They let it all play out. There was nothing that, look how good this team is. Look how deep this team is. And all the arguments about how Jimmy Garoppolo being on the roster screwed up their offseason plans and all this kind of stuff. You got to take a step back and realize that the 49ers have some really smart guys in that front office, and John Lynch and Adam Peters and Kyle Shanahan helping out there as well. They're going to be fine, and moving on from Trey Lance doesn't make sense for them right now.
Yes, I think that is well said, Jack. We've got a super chat coming in before we get to some quick hitting last topics. Jimmy J, again, not Jimmy G. This is Jimmy J. Jimmy G does call into the show occasionally, but not today. What up, Rob? Hell of a way to win the West. Can't wait to meet up in Vegas, my man. So if the Saturdays beat Mini, if whoever's playing Mini beats Mini this weekend, we have the 2 seed. How much more pressure does Kyle feel to win out if that happens? The way Kyle spoke about it in the post-game presser, first of all, Jimmy, thank you so much for the super chat. Phenomenal. The way he spoke about it in the presser made me believe that he's taking it very seriously in winning these games to close out, almost regardless. That I think he has put that pressure on himself. And you heard even some of the younger players, I think it was Jordan Mason in the locker room saying, yeah, it was a party. It was absolutely a party. And we were preparing for the next game. We are mentally moving on to the next challenge that lies ahead. I view this group of men and these coaches as very obsessed with winning. And I think they're going to pursue winning out.
I think so too. I like this. This is funny because what he's saying there is Jeff Saturday. He's the new head coach of the
Saturday. Gotcha.
Colts.
Jeff Saturday. Okay, so it's the Colts playing the Vikings this weekend. Now I get it.
Yep. So we need Big Jeff Saturday to actually have a good game this week in terms of his game management, because he's kind of lacked on that. He's kind of lacked on that the last couple of weeks if you watched any of the Colts games. So I think this is a game where that could be a lot tighter than you normally would think. Given where these two teams are. So if the 49ers, if Minnesota loses this week and the 49ers and the Vikings are tied, there's I don't know if I would say pressure is the word, but I think that Kyle Shanahan continues to put the pedal to the metal and try to finish this thing off and get the 2 seed.
The
49ers want to control everything that they control.
Yes.
Again, go back to what I said about how they dealt with the offseason. They want to be in control of everything. They want everything to be in their terms instead of other teams' terms. And so that's why you saw them trade up to 3 to get a quarterback when they got Trey Lance. That's why you saw them make the moves this year with Jimmy Garoppolo to keep him on board and all those kind of things, because they want to be in control of the situation.
I think that is a very astute observation of what the 49ers prefer themselves. Let us continue. By the way, hit that like button. Do me that favor. If you like the content, go down below. Check out Jack's information. Go find his channel. Subscribe. Follow his videos. Phenomenal content coming out. Great article on the Press Democrat came out today. That link is down below to the Press Democrat as well. Sean951Niners with the super chat. Sneakerhead here on the channel. He takes the other side of this. Sit the starters the next 3 games. The number 3 seed only hurts us if you play number 2 seed. Minnesota will lose before we play them. We will get WC and division. Oh, wild card and division at home, then see Philly. Entirely possible. I would go back to what Jack just said a moment ago, though, of the 49ers wanting to take chance out of it. What you say here is absolutely true and seems probable, Sean. And there's a chance that Minnesota does advance and then the Niners would have to go play them. I think what Jack said is spot on, that you can take that out of the equation by grabbing the number 2 seed. I see the benefit of resting the starters, no question about it. Flav with the last super chat as well. Hey, fellas, I find it interesting Jimmy G is not on IR. Are they holding out hope he can come back to potentially be a backup? That would be huge insurance. That is exactly what they are doing. Until Jimmy Garoppolo hits IR, there is some glimmer of hope that he would be available if needed. With the way Brock Purdy is playing, I cannot see a scenario wherein Jimmy would be put in above Brock Purdy right now. I think Kyle likes to go with the hot hand. But yes, getting him back as a backup above Josh Johnson would be huge for this team.
I agree with you.
Let's close this out on 2 quick hitters here, Jack. The first one is just a one question for you around sweeping the West. How big of a deal is it? Meaning, if we can't impact seeding, let's say we've fallen behind Minnesota for some reason, we get to that final game of the season. Do you think Kyle Shanahan would absolutely rest his starters, or would there be any temptation to attempt to beat Arizona to go 6-0 in the NFC West? Is there anything to that sweep? Or at this point, are we the champs and that's all that matters?
I don't think there's anything necessarily to the sweep. I think it all depends on playoff position and things like that. I get the people calling for the 49ers to rest their players and those types of things, but hey,
sure.
That can work against you. Look what happened to Los Angeles back in 2017. They rested their starters in week 17 and came out and laid an egg the first week of the playoffs. So I think that there's something to be said for it all, but at the same time, these guys are football players, and if they can manage their bodies through this schedule, look at the way this thing is. They have an extended break now. They play on Saturday, so they get an extra day off before their next game against the Raiders, and then it's just a regular schedule after that. So I don't see them trying to slow down at all. I think they're going to try to win the West. They've already won the West, but I think they're going to try to do everything they can to get that 2 seed, and part of that might be sweeping the West by beating Arizona in week 18.
I think you're spot on with that. I think it will be down to the wire. They will attempt to win every game out. Well, let's assume that we get into those playoffs and we make some sort of a run there, or at least attempt to make some noise. I just want to get your quick thoughts on this one. Does Brock need to do more than he's doing to this point to win in the playoffs? We're going to come up against some teams, if we advance, that could be much tougher outs. Get into a matchup against Dallas, a matchup against Philly. You climb your way into the Super Bowl and you're going up against someone like Josh Allen or Patrick Mahomes. Will Brock Purdy have to do more than he's currently doing in order for us to win those games? Or is it just a matter of Purdy staying consistent, staying poised, and operating within the system as he has to this point?
I think you're just looking at him to stay within the system and keep doing what you're doing. The way that this defense is playing, you're going to get to the Super Bowl, I think, if you just don't screw it up. But in terms of the points that you're allowing on defense, I think for the 49ers defense, they're going to hold people to around 20-21. So if you can get to 23, you're going to win games. And I think with Brock Purdy and everything he's done so far, you can average 23 points a game, if you need to. And then you get into the championship game, the Super Bowl, and you're looking at against, like you said, Josh Allen or against Patrick Mahomes, and then you're going to need him to go toe-to-toe with them. And Jimmy Garoppolo was doing a decent job of that, other than that one boneheaded end zone interception. But the defense couldn't get a stop in that game. So it's when we hear these kind of things like doing more, it goes both directions, because you need your defense to play well in order to win games, just like you need your offense. Usually you don't win many games if only one side of the ball is playing well.
Them's the facts, Jack. Well, this has been a phenomenal show. And let's just say that it's a pleasure to be talking about the fact that the 49ers are legitimate contenders. We are in the playoffs, my friend. It is locked in. The Niners will be in the postseason. That brings a wide smile to my face. And with the emergence of Brock Purdy, Mr. Relevant, if you will, we can legitimately talk about these things and making these deep runs, and it is always a pleasure doing so with you, sir. Will you have some shows coming up this weekend, or taking that little breather and back on Monday?
I'm taking a break from YouTube. There won't be any new content going up for me this week as far as my own shows. I'll be
Yes.
putting, whatever fun stuff I might see to put, some stuff up there for you guys. But as far as
Yeah,
a
get
full
those
on
shorts
show,
out there, Jack.
yeah, as far as a full on show, there won't be any of those going on for me until Monday.
Hey, man, enjoy the weekend. Enjoy the win. Enjoy the celebration. We got the holidays coming up. I look forward to connecting with you next week on your channel. Monday should be fun, breaking it down as we come down the stretch for the San Francisco 49ers. Always a pleasure having you here, Jack. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me. I always enjoy talking to you. Always enjoy talking football with you, and it's always a good time. Just make sure you watch your mouth. You got to be careful with the
I needed somebody had to say it. Somebody had to say it. And Sean 9519ers is just sneaking in with the last super chat before we cheers. He says, "What's funny is Brock has the pick each game. Diggs dropped it in Seattle, Tampa Bay not via penalty. Jimmy G throws a pick or close, and he gets fried. LOL." Hey. If you're Brock Purdy right now coming in and performing the way he is, Glock Purdy, you can do no wrong at this point. That's the reality. Everyone feels like he has saved us. Flav coming in to say, Sean, that's the truth. Hey, appreciate the super chat. Appreciate all the contributions. The chat was freaking going today, and I love it, man. I'm a big fan. Jimmy J, we just can't go, Jack. Thinking Minnesota will lose in the wild card is a reach. Can't see them shit in the bed unless Detroit punches their ticket and they go there sitting starters. The last three is great if you want dudes not prepared. Jimmy J says, no, play your starters, play to win every game. Jack is on board with that. I'm on board with that. Let's just win out, Jack. What do you think of that plan?
I think it's the best plan. You just keep on rolling. Just keep on rolling. Let it roll right into the postseason, and just keep on rolling. Like very similar to who was it? There was a team, the Pittsburgh Steelers, right? They won like 13 in a row or something like that with Ben Roethlisberger his rookie season. He got all the way to the AFC Championship game. So just keep doing it.
Let's do it. Somebody has summed it up. Somebody says, win out. Let's go. That's it. Win out and let's go. This has been a great show. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Again, chat was lit, and I always appreciate that. I will be back with the Sneakerhead call-in show tomorrow. So Sneakerheads, make sure that you put that on the calendar. 4 p.m. is the intended time, but look at the community tab on my YouTube page for any changes there. Other than that, you know the drill. We're the NFC champs. Cheers, Niner faithful.